Come with me to Oki Retro, which is a game store in Sand Springs, Oklahoma, to see if I can find some video games that I am looking for and to try to help complete my Nintendo 64 collection. As you can see here, this store is absolutely awesome and the owners are great as well. So I'm definitely glad I stopped in here. But let's go ahead and do a quick tour of the game store and then we'll actually get into some game hunting. This first glass case had purely Xbox stuff, which is absolutely awesome. And then back behind that, they even had a ton of Xbox cool things like the Steel Battalion, and at the top they had like special edition and limited edition games, as well as a few game consoles there in the middle shelf. And this next glass display case kind of was like a catch-all for everything that wasn't Xbox, Nintendo, or PlayStation. And then there was obviously a few extra Nintendo games here, like Game Boy games and other handheld stuff. They even had CRT TVs, which is cool. And then the Mario Soup Cup, which is awesome and so cool to see. And then I made my way to the actual full Nintendo cases here. This is kind of their disc-based case with Wii U, GameCube, and you did see a few Switch games there. Now, they did have a pretty small GameCube section. However, all of these GameCube games are awesome, and so that was pretty cool there. And I saw this Mario game here that I don't have in my collection, which I need to do more research on. Then back behind the display cases, they had a bunch of consoles, as you can see there. But then I made it to the Nintendo cartridge-based glass case, and there's Nintendo 64 games here. We will come back though. But before I was kind of wandering around, I noticed they had NES games, Super Nintendo games, and even awesome amiibos and stuff like that. Until this happened. Wait. What are you doing in Oklahoma?
I'm here checking out Okie Retro.
Okay, I'll be honest here. I knew that Arkansas Picker was going to be here. He actually told me we got to go check this place out while I'm in town. So we ended up having a ton of fun here. And as you can see, here is kind of where they have all their kind of cheaper games that aren't actually in the glass case. You can see there's PlayStation 2, Xbox 360. There's a bunch of cartridge-based games here. Even Nintendo 64 games, which again, when we start shopping, you'll see me grab some cool stuff here. And then more stuff and a ton of plushies at the top and magazines down below, which was pretty cool. And even while I was wandering through, I saw this case and I really wanted to get it, but ultimately I ended up passing it. And then I turned around to kind of go back to the front and got distracted because I ended up finding Nintendo 64 VHS tapes, which you know I've been picking up, so that was totally awesome, as well as a bunch of Nintendo Powers here, which were cool that I dug through. And then I made my way over to the front and kind of towards where they had the PlayStation section. And in this glass case, there was a bunch of PSP games. There was even some PS Vita games, PlayStation 1 games. You could see they had a bunch of stuff, and even to the left here was some PlayStation 2 games. They had a bunch of awesome stuff, and even a sort of decent PS Vita section. Usually I don't see those in my area, so that surprised me. Then I talked to the owner for a bit, and we were kind of making jokes and checking out all the stuff, when I noticed behind him, this Psyduck was so cool. And take a look at that VHS TV right there. I need one of those for my collection, for my game room at some point, but sadly that one wasn't for sale. So I turned and looked at the PS3, the PS4, and the PS5 case right here. And then if you kind of go around to the back side, you can see that there are a ton of Pokemon cards, which was cool. I saw this awesome controller that had been taken apart. Even some Pokemon anime, I guess is what you call them, cartoons, DVDs, then more cards there and everything you need for that, as well as a bunch of VHS tapes, which was sweet. But then this Star Fox plush caught my eye, which was just wild. And now is when I started to get to shopping. And that's when I turned and immediately went right to the Nintendo 64 section, where I ended up getting Bass Hunter 64 because, well, it's on my list and I don't have it. So I dug through there a little bit, and then I made my way up to the front, where before I started looking at the Nintendo 64 games, he actually brought out this Castlevania game, which is extremely rare, which was so cool. I'm so glad he ended up showing us that. He didn't even know how to price it. It was so rare. But then after that, it was definitely time to start looking through the Nintendo 64 section. And this one is a pretty decent selection here. There's actually some really good games, and even a few that I don't actually have. So once I kind of looked through here and figured out everything that I didn't have, I ended up talking to the owner. He came over and grabbed all the games out of the glass cases that I needed. And honestly, this stack ended up being way more than I was expecting, considering I only need like 70 games left. So here is some of the games that I ended up grabbing. Most of these games are games that are pretty cheap, or games that I wouldn't necessarily pick up to play, but seeing these in this store that I don't already have was definitely awesome. So I ended up grabbing those, and while I was talking to him, they said, hey, we just got some new keychains in stock, which was pretty cool. I was buying Nintendo 64 games, so the owner turned around and was like, hold on, check this out. Then he went over to this box and he pulled out these awesome Nintendo 64 cartridges, but they're keychains and they're actually with their logo on it. These are 3D printed. He ended up giving me this, which is absolutely awesome. And after we made our way through the whole store, I grabbed my pile of games, which subsequently ended up being only Nintendo 64 games, which kind of is right up my alley. So let's go ahead and talk about everything that I ended up picking up. This game store is absolutely awesome. It is a distance, kind of a far distance from where I live, but it's on my list and I've got to go back soon because this store is awesome and I've got to support them more for sure. So starting off, I ended up getting that awesome keychain here. You saw him give this to me. Absolutely crazy. So cool. I'm going to have to attach this to my backpack and to take when I go game hunting. I thought this was awesome. And then you guys saw I ended up grabbing 2 VHS tapes here for the Nintendo 64. And honestly, I've got like 4 or 5 of these now, which is totally cool. First off, it was this just kind of regular Nintendo one with the controller on it. I think this is probably just like one you would say is for the launch because it says that on the front. And then I ultimately also got the Star Fox one, which I do not have in my collection. So anytime I can find these VHS tapes that are for the Nintendo 64 that I don't already have, you know I just absolutely have to grab them. But you know why we're all here, and that's to talk about the video games that I ended up getting. And like I said, I'm to the point of no return here for Nintendo 64 games. So I'm going to go ahead and officially, I've mentioned it a little bit on the channel, but this is it. We're officially going for the complete Nintendo 64 set. I have like 220. I think this makes it like 225 or 27, but after picking these up, I'm like, okay, I've got about 70 left, so let's see if I can find some, and I'm going to turn this into a series, and there's going to be a point where I've got to decide what expensive games and how I'm going to get those, and that's probably going to end up being for trade, because I don't know if I could spend $1,000 on a game that's not that great, but we can at least talk about what I picked up here. First off, Bass Hunter 64, which was kind of fitting and funny, as well as Bass Masters 2000, because I was there with the Arkansas picker. So we were hanging out and everything, and his video is coming up, I think, this following Monday. So check that out if you haven't checked his channel out. You got to, but I told him afterwards, I was like, these are right up your alley. And he was like, you're not wrong. So that was funny. And then I ended up getting Monopoly, which honestly, I don't know if it's a good game or not, but I've got it in my collection now. Midway's greatest arcade hits. This one looks like it has Defender, Joust, which is probably one of my favorite, oddly enough, arcade machine games, Spy Hunter, and a few others that are pretty cool. I don't know too much about this game called Scars. It's a game that looks interesting, but I definitely need to try this out soon, and I will. All of these games, I will at least make shorts and kind of play them for like a quick minute and kind of give my thoughts about it. So that's definitely added to the pile. Then I got Mortal Kombat Mythologies Sub-Zero. I've actually never played this game, and I'm a pretty big fan of Mortal Kombat, so I'm definitely glad to have this in my collection. I'm going to be playing this pretty soon, probably sometime this week. And last but not least was Bust-A-Move 99. Again, Bust-A-Move games are fun, so when I saw this, that they had it, I had to grab it. And overall, I ended up getting, what is this? 7 games, a keychain, and some VHS tapes. And every single thing is Nintendo 64 related, which kind of is perfect for this video and perfect for me. If you didn't see it, I recently got an Analog 3D, and I've been playing that every day. I've been making a video, and I'm going to continue making those little shorts. So if you like those and you want to see my thoughts on random, like, seriously, I'm going to make one for Monopoly. If you want to see me and my thoughts about random Nintendo 64 games, make sure you're following my shorts because I've got more coming up. But honestly, shout out to Oki Retro. The dude who owns it was absolutely awesome. I'm terrible at remembering people's names, but shout out to him. I'll make sure I remember it the next time. But I ended up supporting them by buying some games, especially finding games that I don't have in my collection was absolutely awesome. So I had fun and everything. This was definitely a store I've got to visit again. It was such a clean store. And you know, if you go into video game stores, especially used ones, sometimes they smell. But this one was pristine. It was nice and clean. All the games were clean. I'm definitely going back, and I am a huge fan of their store. So I want to know what you thought about this video. Comment down below if you liked it. But enough about that. I got to get out of here. I've got some games to play on that. So check that video out if you haven't already. And honestly, I think I'm probably most excited about Mortal Kombat Mythologies. But let me know what you think down below in the comments because I got to get out of here. But make sure you check that video out if you haven't already.